This is a single parent book. You guys know I'm a sucker for the single parent romances. I love them so much. And hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be filming my April reading wrap up and telling you about every book that I read in the month of April. I read 9 books this month, I think, and I only gave 2 books 5 stars, which is not usual for me. Usually I have a few more, but I don't know, I just wasn't having the best reading month. Everything I was reading I wasn't obsessed with, and I got into like a really big reading slump for a little bit of the month, which sucked. And yeah, but I've been a little bit harsh with my 5-star ratings at the moment. I don't know why, but I haven't been giving many things 5 stars. So let's just go ahead and get into the video, because I have a few exciting books that I want to share with you guys and a few books that weren't quite what I thought they would be. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. So the first book that I read this month was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hong. And you guys, I read my first third-person book. I finally did it. I finally read a third-person book, I know, and I actually loved it. Like, it wasn't even that bad. Like, I didn't love the third person, obviously, because most people don't really like reading in third person, and I'd prefer it if it was in first person, but I did really enjoy this, and I actually bought the next 2 books in the series, and so I'm gonna read those next month, hopefully. But yeah, I literally loved it. It like was so fast paced, easy to read, super fun. I loved Stella and Michael's relationship. It was so freaking cute. So this is about Stella and Michael. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This wasn't quite that 5 stars, probably just because like the third person, but other than that, it was really good and I loved it. And Michael's literally the sweetest. I love him. So Stella has autism, and she is basically really struggling with sex. Essentially, she's like awkward, and she's like, she doesn't really know what she's doing, and she wants to be good at it, and so she hires an escort to assist her in this, and that escort is Michael. And Michael's really confused. He's like, you're stunning, like why would you need help with this, like what? Like, he's super confused, and he's like expecting some really old lady, because that's what he gets most of the time. But then he sees Stella, and you know, he starts teaching her. They make like a little deal, and she's gonna pay him, and he's gonna teach her basically how to be good at sex and how to be intimate with someone. And yeah, this actually turns into fake dating, which is super fun, because you guys know I love a fake dating book. And yeah, I love the autism representation, and it was just a really good read. And Michael and Stella are so cute together. I literally loved Michael, and I can't wait to read the next 2 books. Just really good. And Stella is super fun. She's really quirky and like cute and like socially awkward, and it was just a really fun read, and I really enjoyed it. And I love the cover, and the spice, phenomenal. Hello, it was so good. But this book is just amazing. I loved it. So good. Can't wait to read the next 2. Next book that I read was actually such a disappointing one for me, because I wanted to love it so badly, and it was so hyped up. A few of like my trusted booktubers, booktalkers hyped it up, said it was really good, and I was expecting to love it because I love all their other recommendations, and it just didn't hit for me, and I was so upset because I wanted to love it so bad. And that is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but like it wasn't awful, but it was really cringy. It's a rom-com, and rom-coms can be hit and miss. If they're done right, they can be really good and not cringy, and super funny and great. This one I found really cringy. Like, it wasn't cheesy, because I love cheesy stuff, but it was the jokes, they just weren't funny. I was cringing so hard. I was like, oh my god, these 2 characters are literally so cringy. I hate it here, like the secondhand embarrassment I was getting. And it just wasn't like enjoyable for that reason. But like, I loved the romance between them. It was really cute. So basically this is about Max and Lena, and Lena gets basically left at the altar on her wedding day, and it's basically a disaster. And then she ends up turning into a wedding planner, and she gets this really big job opportunity, but she has to work with her ex-fiance's brother, who is the reason for her wedding getting called off, or so she thinks. And she has to work with him, and there's obviously chemistry there, and they're really attracted to each other, and they hate each other, so it's enemies to lovers, but they have to work together because she needs this job and he needs the promotion that he's gonna get if things go well. And yeah, it kind of goes from there. and so it's workplace romance, enemies to lovers, kind of forbidden because it's her ex's brother, and yeah, it just didn't hit for me. I was expecting to love it, but I just didn't. Like, I loved their romance, they were really cute together, and like the concept is really good, just it was very cringy and the jokes just really they really weren't funny. I just like I didn't like it. And yeah, so I gave it 3 stars. Really annoyed that I didn't like this one. The next book that I read this month was Most of All You by Mia Sheridan. I liked this one. I didn't love it. I thought I was gonna absolutely be obsessed with this like I was with Archer's Voice, but I wasn't. I gave it 4 stars. I did still really enjoy it, but yeah, it wasn't my favorite. So this is about Gabriel and Ellie, and basically they're both struggling in life. They've both been dealt like shit hands and have just had crap lives. And Ellie is a stripper. She works at a strip club and goes by the name Crystal. And Gabriel walks in one day. He is looking for someone to basically teach him how to be not like necessarily intimate with someone, but just like be able to be around like women and be able to talk to them and be like touched and be like, even like the like hold someone's hand freaks him out because he was kidnapped when he was younger and he went through a lot and he has like a crazy past, and so he really struggles with connecting with someone and being like touched at all. And so he goes to this strip club and he meets Ellie and he's like super attracted to her, but he just like has this like kind of like instant connection and like just feels it, and he wants her to teach him, and he's gonna pay her. And she's really hesitant at first because she's like I don't want, like, you're a super nice guy, like I don't want to, but she needs the money, and so she agrees and they start doing this little thing, like spending time together, and slowly that turns into more. Gabriel is the sweetest character. It definitely like Archer's Voice in the sense where he's just like so wholesome, and I loved that aspect of it, but it just like I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but I still did really enjoy this one. And yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It was literally the sweetest. Love him so much. The quotes in this book, phenomenal. And yeah, so that was the next book that I read this month. Then I went into a reading slump because I tried to read Letters to Molly by Daphne Perry, and for some reason I couldn't get into it. I don't know what it was. I couldn't get into it, and I tried so much, and I didn't DNF it because I definitely want to read it because it sounds like such a good book, and I've seen quotes from it and I'm just like, oh my god, I love it here. But I just was in a slump, like I just couldn't get into it, so I put it down and I decided to read some Colleen Hoover because Colleen Hoover is my go-to author for whenever I'm in a reading slump. I love every single one of her books that I've read so far, and she always gets me out of a slump. So I read the next book in the Hopeless series, which is Losing Hope, and this is just Hopeless told in Dean's point of view, which is the guy. And I loved it so much. 5 stars, phenomenal, stunning, beautiful, amazing. Colleen Hoover can do no wrong. I've said it 1,000 times. So good. And yeah, it wasn't repetitive at all. Like, obviously it is the same story, but you get Dean's POV, but it didn't feel like I was reading the exact same thing because you get a lot of like before he met Sky, you get like that, and you get to see stuff that happened with his sister, and he writes these letters to her and it's like really sweet, and you get to see that throughout the book, which was really cool, and I really liked that. And then you go into like obviously him meeting her, but you get to see what he was doing when they weren't together, and like some things get revealed like that you saw happen in the first book that was actually like different to what it seemed, which I thought was really cool. And then obviously some bits were repetitive towards the end of like the big like plot twist reveal thing and like the heartbreak part, because obviously they were together for that and it has to go into the story, so that felt a little bit repetitive. But other than that, loved it. So good. Loved getting inside Dean's head and finding out, you know, what he was thinking when he was falling in love with Sky, and I just loved it. 5 stars. And then I read Finding Cinderella, which is the little novella that you read afterwards about Six and Daniel. Daniel is Dean's best friend and Six is Sky's best friend, and you get to see how they meet and how their little love story goes. I would have loved this to be like a full novel because I loved it. It was so good and it's really cute, like in the whole name, Finding Cinderella, like how that works into it. I loved it, so I gave this one 5 stars as well. Would have loved it to be longer, But yeah, and I can't wait to reread All Your Perfects and then read Finding Perfect, see what the connection is. But yeah, so I love this one. And the next book that I read was Thrive by Krista and Becca Ritchie, the sixth book in the Addicted / Cowboy Sisters series. And I loved it, so good. Gave it 4 stars only because this is basically just a recap of Kiss the Sky and Hot House Flower, because obviously you can read the Addicted series on its own and not intertwine it with the Cowboy Sisters series. And so it recapped those books but in Lily and Lo's perspective, so it was a little bit repetitive, but because I did read them so far apart and I did that purposefully, so it didn't feel like I was reading the exact same thing. And I put this off because I didn't want to read it because I felt like it was just going to be a recap, which it was, but it was really good to see Lily and Lo's perspective. But because I did put so much space between Hot House Flower and reading Thrive, I kind of forgot some of the things that happened, and I was like, oh yeah, that did happen when I was reading it. But I devoured this. I read it really, really quickly. So good. Loved getting back into Lily and Lo's point of view, and I don't want to read Addicted after all. It's the last book for Lily and Lo. Obviously you have the epilogue novel, but the last book for them, and that breaks my heart. I love them, but I also want to read it because I love them. But yeah, so I read Thrive, 4 stars, only because it was super obviously repetitive of everything that happened, but still really enjoyed it. Love seeing it from their perspective and seeing things that happened that you didn't get to see in Hot House Flower and Kiss the Sky. And yeah, that was the next book that I read. Now moving on to the books that I read on my Kindle this month. The first one was The Birthday List by Daphne Perry. I loved this one. It was so cute. Such a good concept, and my first book by Daphne Perry, and I really enjoyed her writing. I gave this one 4 stars. It's about Cole and Poppy. Actually, Poppy lost her husband a couple of years ago, and she was really struggling with that, obviously, but it's been a couple of years, and she found his list that's it's called a birthday list, and it's basically a bucket list, but he wanted to do these things before every birthday. So by his 40th birthday he wanted to have, say, gone skydiving or something like that, and he has a list of all these things that he wanted to do before he turns a certain age, kind of like a bucket list but a yearly thing. And she decides that she wants to complete this list as a way of closure, in a way, just to put that part of her life behind her, move on, move forward, and get that final closure on her story with him. And so she decides that she's going to complete this, but it is such a long list, and she wants to complete it by the end of the year. And then she meets Cole, and Cole is a police officer in this small town, and he decides that he's going to help her complete this list, and which is super sweet. He is literally the sweetest. I love him. And they start completing this list together and, fall in love along the way. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. And then obviously the next book in that series is Letters to Molly, which I spoke about before, but I just couldn't get into it, and I hated that I couldn't get into it because I wanted to love it. It was a second chance romance. Love second chance romances, but I just couldn't get into it. So I'm gonna try again later on when I'm not in a reading slump, and hopefully I'll love it, fingers crossed. And then I read A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It's a boarding school enemies to lovers romance, and I love the whole boarding school vibe. It's just I don't know, something about it is just I love it. And so this is about Ren and Crew, and they basically hate each other, but Crew kind of has this obsession with her. He's really fascinated by her, he's really attracted to her, and he hates her at the same time. And basically for their psychology class they have to work together on a project, and so they have to spend a lot of time together, and they're always around each other, and that attraction grows. And it's definitely bad boy good girl. She is the innocent virgin who doesn't want anything to do with the bad boy, but he wants to pursue her, and I just love it. I love good girl bad boy. You just can't go wrong with a good girl bad boy book. And add the boarding school aspect and the working together on a project, and it's just a classic that I just love, and so I love this one. I gave it 4 stars, and the whole like A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime thing was literally so cute. Like it was so good. And there's 2 other books that follow like the same family, like the Lancasters, and so I want to read those as well because I really enjoyed this one. And it was like almost 600 pages, but like I read it really quickly. Like I read it in like 2 days. It was so good. The last book that I read this month was 1% of You by Michelle Gross, or I feel like it's not gross, but like Gross. This is a single parent book. You guys know I'm a sucker for the single parent romances. I love them so much, and this one was so good. Hella grumpy sunshine. It follows Hadley and Elijah, and Hadley basically is a single mom. She has 1 kid and she's also pregnant with a kid, and her ex is a dick. He is awful, and he ends up cheating on her and they break up, and so she's struggling. She is a nurse and she is doing school while trying to raise a kid while being pregnant and working a job to earn money to provide for a kid, and she's just really struggling. And Elijah moves in next door. He owns a tattoo shop, so he's covered in tattoos, and it's so like hot. I love it. And basically they meet at a supermarket and he tries to steal the chips from the kid. And like, you're literally a grown man trying to steal chips from like a 3-year-old child. Like, what? But I loved the banter between Lucy the little kid and Elijah. It was so cute. Like I love when the kids have banter with like the love interest. It's literally so wholesome. I love it. And yeah, so he ends up like helping her out. Like it starts as like enemies to lovers and severe grumpy sunshine. He's literally such a grump, and then slowly he starts helping her and they become like friends, and then slowly that turns into more, and it's so good. Loved it. Loved the kid. She was adorable, and loved Elijah. He was literally everything, and it was just such a good book. And that is the last book that I read this month. So that is all the books that I read in the month of April. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.